My name is Celine. The title of this post is something I have whispered to myself for over a decade, but never dared to type out. People worry about your mental health when you talk about ghosts. They worry even more when you tell them you are living with one. But I'm 36 now. I'm established, I'm stable, and I'm far enough away from the event to look at it clearly. I need to get this down because I looked at her this morning, really looked at her, and I realized the truth is undeniable. To understand what I have now, you have to understand what I lost. It started 15 years ago. I was 21, living in a cramped, drafty apartment in Montreal with the love of my life, Marianne. We were young, stupidly in love and perpetually broke. Marianne was everything I wasn't. I was quiet, anxious, and prone to overthinking. Marianne was a firecracker. She was loud, she laughed with her whole chest, and she had the most piercing, impossible blue eyes I have ever seen on a human being. She was my anchor, until the night I let her drive away angry. The argument was stupid. It's the cliche of every tragedy, isn't it? We fought over money. We were short on rent and she had spent a little extra on concert tickets for my birthday. I should have been grateful. Instead, I yelled. I told her she was irresponsible. I told her she didn't take our future seriously. The last words I said to her were, "Just get out. I can't look at you right now." So she did. She grabbed her keys, her eyes swimming with tears that made that blue look like a stormy ocean, and she slammed the door. 2 hours later, the police were knocking. Black ice on the highway. She had lost control of our beat-up Honda and went over the guardrail. She died on impact. The weeks following the funeral are a blur of gray. I don't remember eating. I don't remember sleeping, really. I just remember laying in our bed staring at the empty spot beside me, smelling the fading scent of her vanilla shampoo on the pillowcase. The guilt was a physical weight. It sat on my chest like an anvil. I had killed her. I convinced myself of that. If I hadn't yelled, if I hadn't kicked her out, she would be safe in bed. I was a murderer. That was when the activity started. At first, I welcomed it. It began small. I would come home from my waitressing job to find things displaced. A picture frame turned to face down, the cabinet doors in the kitchen wide open. The temperature in the apartment would plummet, leaving my breath visible in the air despite the radiator clanking away at full blast. My grieving mind didn't register fear. It registered hope. "Marianne," I would whisper into the darkness. "Is that you?" I assumed she was back. I assumed she wanted to tell me she was okay. But the atmosphere in the apartment wasn't comforting. It was heavy. It felt oppressive, like the air pressure before a tornado. 3 weeks after the funeral, the activity shifted from passive to aggressive. I was in the kitchen making tea. I had the kettle on the stove. Suddenly, the burner dial snapped from low to high on its own. The gas flared up with a whoosh. I jumped back, my heart hammering. I reached out to turn it off, and a mug from the drying rack flew off the counter. It didn't just fall, it was thrown. It shattered against the wall inches from my head. I stood there, shards of ceramic at my feet, trembling. "Marianne," I cried out, tears streaming down my face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I thought it was her anger. I thought she was trapped here, furious at me for the way we left things. I deserved it, I told myself. If she wanted to throw things, let her. I deserved every bit of it. But it got worse. The nights became unbearable. I would wake up at 3 a.m. to the sound of heavy, wet breathing right next to my ear. Not the soft breath of a sleeping partner, but a raspy, guttural sound. When I reached for the lamp, the bulb would pop with a deafening crack, plunging me back into darkness. Shadows began to pool in the corners of the room, taller and darker than they should have been. They seemed to stretch toward the bed. I stopped sleeping. I became a ghost of myself, dark circles under my eyes, shaking through my shifts at work. The culmination happened on a Tuesday in November. It was a month after the accident. I was lying in bed fully dressed because I was too terrified to change into pajamas anymore. I was staring at the ceiling and waiting for the sun to rise. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Then the temperature dropped. It wasn't gradual, it was instant. The air went freezing cold, so sharp it hurt my nose to inhale. I squeezed my eyes shut. "I'm sorry, Marianne," I whispered, my mantra of guilt. Something grabbed my ankles. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was a vice grip, strong and painful, like two bands of steel clamping down on my bones. I gasped, my eyes flying open. I tried to kick, but my legs wouldn't move. With a violent jerk, I was ripped down the mattress. I screamed. I clawed at the sheets, desperate for purchase, but the fabric just bunched in my hands. I was dragged off the foot of the bed, my hips slamming hard onto the hardwood floor. The grip didn't let go. I was being pulled across the floor of the bedroom toward the open closet door. The closet was a gaping maw of darkness. "Marianne, stop, please," I shrieked. I grabbed the leg of the heavy oak dresser as I slid past. The friction burned my palms, but I held on. The force pulling my legs was immense, threatening to dislocate my hips. I was sobbing, hysterical, kicking wildly with my feet against empty air. Suddenly, the grip vanished. I didn't wait. I scrambled up, scrambled into the corner of the room and curled into a ball, hyperventilating. I stayed there until dawn broke, watching the closet, waiting for her to come back and finish me. I looked at my ankles in the morning light. There were bruises, distinct finger-shaped bruises, but they weren't the size of Marianne's hands. Marianne had small, delicate hands. These marks were large. The fingers were too long. A cold realization settled in my gut. That wasn't Marianne. Marianne had a temper, yes, she could be fiery, but she was never cruel. She would never hurt me physically. She loved me. Even in our worst moments, she loved me. Whatever was in my apartment, whatever was dragging me toward the dark, wasn't the woman I loved. It was something else, something that fed on misery, and I was an all-you-can-eat buffet. I was terrified to go back to the apartment, but I had nowhere else to go. I spent the day walking around the city, freezing in this November wind, dreading the sunset. That evening, as I approached the front steps of my building, I saw something sitting near the communal trash cans. It was a cat. It wasn't scrounging for food and it wasn't fleeing from the noise of the street. It was sitting perfectly still, its tail wrapped neatly around its paws, watching me. It was a calico, mostly white with patches of orange and black. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. The cat stood up and let out a soft, meowing sound. It walked right up to me, winding through my legs, rubbing its cheek against my shins. I reached down automatically to pet it. The fur was soft, surprisingly clean for a stray. Then the cat looked up at me. The breath caught in my throat. The eyes. They were blue. Not the greenish yellow or amber typical of cats. They were a deep, striking, impossible electric blue. They were her eyes. I fell to my knees on the sidewalk, ignoring the cold concrete. I stared at the cat and the cat stared back with an intelligence that felt jarring. It bumped its forehead against my nose, purring, a sound like a small engine. "Hey," I whispered, my voice trembling. The cat didn't run away. When I stood up and unlocked the front door of the building, the cat trotted inside ahead of me as if it owned the place. I hesitated and then followed. It climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment door and sat there waiting for me to turn the key. I opened the door. Usually the dread would hit me the moment I crossed the threshold. The heavy, malicious atmosphere. The cat walked in first. It strutted into the center of the living room, sat down, and let out a long, low hiss. It wasn't hissing at me. It was staring at the dark hallway leading to the bedroom. The fur along its spine stood up in a rigid ridge. I stood by the door paralyzed. The cat held its ground. It let out a growl that sounded too deep for its small body. Then it strode forward into the hallway into the bedroom. I heard a thump like something heavy falling, and then silence. The cat came trotting back out a moment later, its tail held high, looking relaxed. It walked over to the couch, Marianne's favorite spot, jumped up, curled into a ball, and went to sleep. For the first time in a month, the apartment felt empty, but in a good way. The heavy pressure was gone. I didn't kick the cat out. I named her Marianne. It felt sacrilegious to anyone else, I'm sure, but it felt like the only option to me. Things changed after Marianne the cat moved in. The supernatural activity didn't stop immediately, but it changed. It felt like a war was being waged, but I was no longer the soldier. I was the civilian being protected. One night I was watching TV. The air grew cold again. The familiar scent of ozone and rot began to creep in. I tensed up, clutching a pillow. Marianne, who had been dozing on my lap, instantly woke up. She leapt off the couch and stood in the center of the room. She stared at an empty corner near the ceiling, her ears pinned back flat against her skull. She let out a scream, that specific yowling caterwaul that cats make when they are about to fight. The lights flickered. The TV turned itself off. Marianne launched herself at the wall. She literally ran halfway up the drywall, claws out, swiping at the empty air. I saw, and I swear this is true, a dark, misty shape recoil from her. She landed on her feet and hissed again, spitting, her blue eyes blazing. The cold air dissipated instantly. The TV flickered back on. Marianne sat down and licked her paw and looked at me as if to say, "It's handled." This happened a few more times over the next month. Whatever that thing was, whatever dark parasite had latched onto my grief, it was trying to come back. And every time Marianne was there, she was a sentinel. She slept on the pillow next to my head every single night. If I shifted in a nightmare, she would place a paw on my cheek, grounding me. I started to notice things about her behavior. Things that made the hairs on my arms stand up. My human girlfriend, Marianne, had a very specific hate for olives. If a pizza came with olives, she would pick them off with surgical precision and stack them in a pyramid on a napkin. One night I ordered a supreme pizza. I was eating at the coffee table. The cat jumped up. She sniffed a slice. She delicately used her claw to hook an olive, fling it off the pizza onto the table, and then nudged it away with her nose. She did this to every olive on the slice before trying to steal a piece of the pepperoni. I just stared at her. "Really?" I asked. She blinked slowly. Marianne, the human, also had a habit of tapping her fingers when she was impatient. The cat, when waiting for me to fill the food bowl, would tap her left paw rhythmically against the floor tiles. Tap, tap, tap. She didn't like cat toys. I bought feathers, laser pointers, fake mice. She looked at them with disdain. But she loved watching reality TV. She would sit on the back of the couch, eyes glued to the screen, head moving back and forth as the people argued. Human Marianne used to say it was her trashy, guilty pleasure. Slowly, the fear in my life evaporated. The dark entity gave up. It couldn't get past the guard dog, or rather the guard cat. By the time spring arrived, the apartment was just an apartment again. But I was never alone. I talked to her. I know that's what crazy cat ladies do, but this was different. I told her about my day. I told her I was sorry about the fight. I told her I loved her. Whenever I apologized for the accident, for the argument, she would butt her head against my mouth to silence me. She would purr so loudly it rattled her ribs. It was forgiveness. I knew it. Life went on. I moved out of that apartment 2 years later. Marianne came with me, obviously. I went back to school. I got a degree. I started a career in graphic design. I dated a few people, though it never really worked out. It's hard to bring someone home when you feel like your dead ex is judging them from the top of the cat tree. And that brings us to today. I was sitting on my porch this morning drinking coffee. Marianne was sunning herself on the railing. I realized the date, October 14th. It has been exactly 15 years since the accident. It has been 15 years minus 3 weeks since I found the cat. I looked at her. 15 years is a long time for a cat. A cat at 15 is usually slowing down. They have gray hairs around their muzzle. Their eyes get cloudy with cataracts. They sleep 20 hours a day. They have trouble jumping onto high surfaces. Marianne looks exactly the same as the day I found her. I mean exactly. Her fur is pristine, silky and vibrant. There is not a single white hair on her black and orange patches. Her eyes are that same crystal piercing electric blue, clear as a summer sky. She jumped from the porch railing to the roof of the garage this morning, a 6-foot vertical leap, to chase a squirrel. She moves with the agility of a kitten. She eats with the appetite of a lion. I took her to the vet last week for a checkup. The vet, a new guy, looked at her chart. Born roughly 15 years ago, he asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, I said, I found her then. He examined her, he checked her teeth, her heart, her joints. He looked perplexed. He took an X-ray just to check for arthritis. This is bizarre, he told me, showing me the scan. Her bone density, her teeth. If you didn't tell me she was 15, I'd say this cat is maybe 2 years old. Maximum. There's zero sign of aging, absolutely none. I nodded, I wasn't surprised. I came home and looked at old photos. I found a picture of human Marianne from her 20th birthday. She's laughing, looking at the camera. The look in her eyes is defiance and joy mixed together. Then I looked at the cat sitting on my desk, watching me write this. I don't think she's a cat. I mean, she is a cat biologically, I suppose. But the spirit inside, the thing looking out through those blue eyes, the entity that attacked me 15 years ago wanted to hurt me. It was drawn to my guilt. But Marianne, she fought it off. She came back. She found a vessel that would let her stay. I've read about this kind of thing. Reincarnation, possession, spiritual attachment. Usually spirits move on. They fade. Or if they stay in an animal, the animal eventually ages and dies. But she isn't aging, she isn't leaving. I stroked her head a few minutes ago, running my thumb over her ears. I whispered, "You're not going anywhere, are you?" She let out a short, sharp meow. It sounded like no. She bit my thumb gently, another thing human Marianne used to do when she was being playful, and began to lick my hand with her sandpaper tongue. I'm not scared. I should be, probably. It defies every law of nature. I'm living with a creature that is effectively immortal, inhabited by my dead girlfriend who refuses to cross over because she thinks I can't handle myself alone. And the honest truth, she's probably right. She's looking at me right now. She wants me to stop typing. She's tapping her left paw on the desk. Tap, tap, tap. I guess I better go. She hates to be ignored.